Do you have a true scary story you want to hear on the channel? Well, you're in luck. You can go to astheravendreams.com and send it directly to me. And of course, thank you. This happened back when my now husband and I were just dating. We were 18, just a few months out of high school, and were enjoying our summer before he started college. I wasn't sure what I was doing quite yet, but between us both working full-time, him going to school full-time, and trying to find our own place, I knew we were going to be really busy really soon. So I really appreciated our free time that we got together. At the time of this, I had moved in with him, but he of course was still living at home with his parents, so we were both pretty eager to get our own place. In the meantime, we would find time to go walk around the park, have a nice dinner, or just go driving for a few hours so that we could get some time to ourselves. This event took place during one of those drives. It had been a long week for me. I was feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, so we went out for dinner to try and enjoy the night. Dinner was great. We stayed later than we expected as we'd been talking a lot, so by the time we left, it was pretty dark. We wanted to stop by a store before heading home to grab a few things, so we took this side road to get there. It was a road parallel to the highway and used pretty heavily, with a speed limit of 45 miles per hour. We were cruising along, still talking, when as we approached a stoplight, I saw a dark figure practically sitting in the road. They were sitting towards the side, but in the crosswalk area. They were far enough out that we were going to have to swerve to get around them. As mentioned, being parallel to the highway and the speed limit, this road was heavily used. Maybe not later at night, but even so, where they were was not safe. It was pretty dangerous to be in the road like that. Me, being the person I am, was very concerned at first. I wanted to make sure that they were okay. I asked Will to slowly approach and I would roll down the window to talk to them since they were on my side. We slowed to a stop, and I noticed a few things before I spoke. They looked to be sitting with their knees to their chest, holding them with their face down in their lap. From the looks of their figure and long hair, I assumed they were female. They were wearing a long, dark shirt that stood out against their very pale skin, but her arms and fingers looked incredibly bony and dirty. I could also hear them going between humming to a slight whimper or a cry. "Excuse me, are you okay?" When I said that, all sound from them stopped and they went silent. So I asked again if they were okay or if they needed help, but they didn't respond. Will started to become pretty spooked and said that we should just leave and call the cops. Part of me didn't want to leave her alone, but I also fully understood his concern. It was entirely possible that she was in danger, but it was also possible that this could have been a ploy to get us to stop, and now we were in danger. So I agreed with Will, and as I was trying to tell them that we would be back with help, they pulled their head back and let out a blood-curdling scream. It scared the hell out of me. I leaned back in my seat, so scared that I couldn't seem to figure out how to roll the window back up. I continued to watch as they jumped to their feet, still screaming. Will drove off as I tried to catch my breath, but then he started yelling that they were following us. Without looking, my initial thought was that it was a setup or someone was messing with us, and was now following us in their car. Boy, was I wrong. They were on foot. It was the same woman, or whatever that thing was. And the worst part was that they were catching up. We weren't going 45 yet, maybe about 25 or so, but to see what I presumed to be a human catching up to us scared the hell out of me. They kept running and eventually caught up to us. They were running alongside the back passenger side door. I think we were both wanting to know their endgame since they were on foot, but I was starting to get too freaked out. It was dark, so we only saw blips of light from the streetlights, and forgive me, but their face almost looked blurry. It was like their features were slightly smeared. Something about all of this was giving me existential dread, and I started hyperventilating. I remember I just kept telling Will to go faster, and the last thing I remember was looking over at his speedometer and it reading 52. And then I passed out. I don't think I was out for very long because I awoke to a thud, and Will hit the brakes pretty hard. I asked what happened, and he said that he thought that we'd hit something, but then mentioned the person chasing us couldn't keep up. As bad as it was, I didn't want him to get out of the car. It was like we were in some kind of horror movie. I feared that he would open the door and get dragged off somewhere and I would never see him again. We rolled down the windows to look around, and when we didn't see anything, we drove a little further to see if there was something under the car. Nothing was there. I told him that we needed to just go home. We went straight home from there, and thankfully his dad was already in bed, and his mom didn't pay much attention when we walked in. We went to our room, and after I cried for a bit, we tried to dissect everything that had just happened. He agreed that their face looked messed up, but he couldn't understand why either. We also couldn't explain how they could have been going so fast. That's not normal. At least not for a human. He also said that I wasn't out for very long, but he had made a comment that they were losing us, and that was when he noticed I was out. And before he could even process that and try to wake me up, the thud happened. Neither of us have any idea what that could have been. There was nothing around us or under the car from what we could see. And one thing that really bothered me was that I passed out. I had never had fainting spells prior to that night, but that scared me enough that I did. It hasn't happened to me since, thankfully, but when I get really stressed out or scared, which isn't often besides the little jump scares here and there, I start to wonder if I'll pass out again. So, we both questioned what the hell it was that we witnessed. They were in the road, which would obviously get anyone's attention. They quickly stood up, or screaming, and were able to run long enough to catch up with us. We both are firm believers that there are things out there, creatures, unknowns, whatever you want to call them, that we know nothing about. And we both wonder, with their speed and warped face, was this something trying to pretend to be a human? Has anyone ever heard of something like that? We haven't told a lot of people about this, just a few friends, those that we know that would believe us or take us seriously. But I swear on everything that everything I just recounted happened. And I still don't know how to explain it. All I know is that now, I'm terrified to go down that road late at night, and nearly have a panic attack when I see someone on the side of the road. This story happened around 12 years or so ago, and it was kind of a nothing happened sort of event, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't scary when it did happen. I used to have some friends that lived out in the middle of nowhere, and I would spend the weekend out at their place sometimes when the weather was nice. We used to do a lot of stupid stuff back then, when I was there, and since they lived in a secluded area, we could be as dumb and loud as we wanted. Of course, because they lived so far out, I had to drive for a few hours, both ways, every time. It was worth it though. But driving for that long, you're bound to eventually experience something bizarre. I was about 25 minutes down the old 2-lane highway heading to my buddy's house on that Friday evening, when I spotted something a bit up the way in my headlights. Now, I would see trash and other random detritus on the side of the road pretty regularly, but this wasn't just a random piece of junk. It looked like a dress. like a full-on pink sundress hanging onto a tree branch over the road, like the wind had blown it upwards and it got caught. Normally, this wouldn't have mattered to me. I would have just laughed at it and kept on. But I noticed that this pretty little dress was covered in what looked like red stains, like blood. And it didn't really look old or browned. It was still fairly vividly red. I stopped the truck and got out to look, and I was pretty well certain that whoever this dress belonged to had been attacked in some way. The fabric was torn or cut, but I couldn't tell if it was by a knife or claws, and it was drenched in what I was 99% certain it was blood. Unfortunately, the dress was too high up for me to get it down, and there was nothing I could do to get it. At this point, I was looking around to see if there was someone that had been attacked by a bear or wolf or something and was bleeding out. But there was nobody around, and it was completely silent. I figured the best course of action was to call the police and report it, since this could be a serious situation. I reached in to grab my phone and make the call, and my battery was completely dead. Being this far out, there's no service, so my battery would drain because it was constantly looking for a tower to connect to, and of course I didn't have my charger in my truck. I cursed at myself for my lack of foresight and decided to just gun it to my friend's house and call the cops there. So that's what I did. I went way too fast to get there, and I made it way quicker than I should have. When I got there, I frantically told him about what I'd seen, and he had the same thoughts that I had. That some poor girl had been attacked by a bear out in the woods, and was either bleeding out or beyond help. I ended up calling the cops and reporting what I had seen, and the approximate location, and I told the dispatcher that we would drive back to where I found it and they could meet us there. We drove out to the spot, and the dress was still hooked into the trees, thankfully. I didn't have to do too much explaining, other than tell them that I was driving and saw it and that I hadn't heard anyone in the area when I stopped earlier. They thanked me for reporting it because it was definitely odd. They also asked me for my information just in case they had any more questions. So I gave it to them and they took over from there. We got back to my buddy's house, and it was honestly on my mind for the entire weekend. Obviously, they never did contact me, and I bugged my friend to see if there was any information. It was a small town area, and if anything happened, people talked. But there were never any updates. Whatever happened pretty much remained a mystery. Obviously, it could have been nothing, but I'm damn near certain that dress was covered in actual blood that was still fairly fresh. It was nowhere near Halloween, so I'm doubting it was a costume or anything. Though, I guess someone could have just wanted to do a horror photo shoot out in the woods, and I guess maybe it got freaky and they lost their clothes or something. I don't know. Like I said, I know that nothing really happened in this story, but I honestly feel like this was the result of someone getting attacked by something or someone in the woods, and they just never found the body. I hope that's not the case, but I'm guessing that I'll never actually have the answer to whether or not it was. This actually happened to me just a week ago, and I finally had the time to write this up and send it in to you. I had to share this. I was coming home from a wedding rehearsal of two of my best friends, so I was in a really good mood. I was enjoying the air as it was warmer than it had been, a nice break from the cold, gloomy March we've been having. It was pretty late, so there wasn't much traffic on the highway either, which made the drive that much better. As I was driving along, I glanced in the rear view after seeing some headlights behind me. It was nothing out of the ordinary, so I thought nothing else of it and continued driving. But then the vehicle seemed to grab my attention because it looked like they were flashing their brights. It was weird, but some people are just jerks on the road, so I made a mental note and continued on. It then became pretty clear that they were gaining on me fairly fast, and I was expecting them to swerve over at the last minute to pass me. They were obviously going way too fast. I watched them catch up to me, however, they didn't move over. I was in the middle lane. The right lane was consistently an exit or emerging lane for people entering the highway, so I typically stayed in the middle to keep out of the way. And that left the left lane open for them to pass, but they didn't. They got really close to my bumper, and then would back off, and then get close behind me again. I had no idea who these people were and why they were even doing this, but at first it just irritated me. I thought they were just trying to be an ass and maybe scare me. Look, I'm a guy and I don't typically scare easily, so I just did what anyone would have done in that situation. I tapped my brakes and flipped the bird. Apparently they were not happy with that. They laid on their horn for several seconds and then finally swerved over to my left. I tried to look at them, but their windows were so dark and tinted that I couldn't make anything out. They kept the same speed as me, but would slowly veer into my lane. Now they were making things way too dangerous, and it did start to bother me. It was getting pretty close to my exit, so I got over to the right, preparing to get off the highway and hopefully leave behind whatever this drama was that they were trying to cause. But they seemed to have other ideas. As I got over, they moved to the middle lane and then swerved to the right lane, leaving me to hit my brakes pretty hard so as to not hit them. It was damn near an accident, and I would have hit them, which would have put me at fault. I just slowed down more to keep my distance, waiting to finally get out of there. I saw my exit and started veering to get over, hoping they wouldn't be paying attention. Unfortunately, they were, and again they swerved over. But this time they turned sharp enough that they were nearly diagonal across the lanes, forcing me to come to a full stop. They had also stopped, which started putting me into a panic. Why were they doing this to me? Why did they charge behind me and immediately start being aggressive? Then I saw a woman get out of the passenger seat. I wasn't going to take any chances, so I grabbed my cell phone and called 911. I started explaining to the operator where I was and what was happening, as the woman approached my passenger side window. She was wearing some dirty-looking jean shorts and some weird-looking halter top. I think that's what they're called. It tied around her neck but was sheer, as you could see her bra underneath it. Her hair was in a very loose and messy bun, and she was carrying what looked like a sandwich. Her face was seemingly expressionless, but when she reached my window, she motioned for me to roll it down. I did as she requested, but just enough to hear what she had to say. She was pretty small, but I don't think she would have even been able to fit her arm through it. This whole time, I still had the operator on the phone, hoping they would hear everything that she said too. That woman's face went from 0 to 100 within the time of me rolling down the window. She was literally screaming at me, saying, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you pull over?" She was calling me names and threatening to have her boyfriend beat me up. I was taken aback by her demeanor, but between her taking a breath, I finally decided to try to stand my ground. "You guys damn near hit me. What the hell is wrong with you, you psycho?" I was surprised that actually seemed to shut her up. She stared at me, took a bite of her sandwich, and said, "Yeah. Can I borrow $50? What the hell? Why would I just give some random stranger money? A random stranger that just tried to run me over and screamed at me. I told her hell no, and then she called me another name and walked off after kicking my door. The operator called out to me, so I went to explain what was happening as I watched her walk off, when she abruptly turned around and threw her sandwich at my windshield, making me jump. I could hear a man's voice shouting, and I could see the woman shouting back as she flung open the passenger door and got in. She barely got the door closed before they sped off, back onto the highway, and were out of sight. I just sat there trying to process what the hell just happened. I told the operator that they were gone, but she said an officer was already close by and asked me to wait for them to at least make a report. Shortly after, I could hear the sirens approaching and waited until they stopped and asked me to get out. I again explained what happened to them, and if it weren't for the remnants of bread and mayonnaise on my windshield and the operator hearing it all, I don't think they would have believed me. They took a report, but since they were long gone, there wasn't really much else they could do. They offered to escort me home, but I passed, doubting that they would ever find me. I then watched them drive down the road and disappear. I made it home without another incident, but the whole thing kept playing in my mind as I had to scrape off my windshield. Having someone ride my bumper like that and then aggressively try to hit me, not to mention get out to berate me, was pretty terrifying. I was expecting her to be the distraction while the driver would come over to my side and try to do something worse. That's why I called for help. But then, as I cleaned my window off, I couldn't help but laugh. Did she really think asking for money would work? And why did she throw her sandwich? That drive home was a roller coaster of emotions, and it was so bizarre that I question if it really happened. Hi, I'm a 37-year-old mom who has 3 kids. I'm going to give them fake names to identify them here. Ian is 7, Lila's 10, and Steven is 15. Since I work the night shift and the occasional weekend, while my husband works throughout the week, it's up to me to do the school run in the morning and in the afternoon. Not to mention get my kids ready for school in the morning, but usually it isn't too much stress. The morning was the same as we had done so many times before. The kids protested and finally got in the car. There were more cars on the road, and the crossing was slow and it was bumper to bumper, so to speak. Where I live is notoriously safe and boring. It's the kind of community where you can pretty much leave your front door unlocked and not have to worry about anyone stealing anything. The kids were annoying each other, and over the car radio I heard screaming from the cars up ahead of me. I looked out my window and saw a man shouting. He held something long in his hand that I couldn't quite make out at first. He looked like he was going to try to hit the window. Some of the cars in front of me pulled out a line in order to get away. I turned the radio down, and the kids finally put their phones away to see what was happening. There were more of them. Several men walking with baseball bats, and they started breaking car windows, damaging the cars, and screaming at people. I reached for my phone to call the police, got through to them, and I started telling them what was happening and that they needed to get there quickly. They came up to me, pointed a bat at me, and started screaming. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying to me, but I remember he told me to stop and get out of the car. There was no way I was going to do that. I have a feeling that he knew I was on the phone with the police. My kids were screaming at me to drive away, and I pulled out of the line, nearly crashing into another car, and to the man who was threatening us. Both the other car and I blew our horns. It was loud and chaotic. I sped away, but I know I didn't hit him. I don't know what I would have done if I actually hurt somebody. One of the men further down the road raised the bat at my car and hit it below the rear side window. I don't know who screamed louder when it happened, me or the kids. We drove down the road and I didn't feel safe enough to risk trying to drop the kids off. We saw more of them walking around that road. They looked at our car a little too intently, but ultimately didn't do anything to us. I didn't want to risk them following me home, and I really needed to get away. I drove the kids around the neighboring suburb, hoping that the police had come and done their job. I called my husband and told him what had happened. He was tempted to leave work to make sure that we were safe. They did eventually come and make arrests. And after a bit, it came out that one of the local dads had owed a lot of money to one of the bigger town's local gangs, and since they couldn't find him to get it back, they had decided to threaten his wife and kids, and anyone else that was there as witnesses. Pretty messed up if you ask me. I don't know what else happened to them or if he finally ended up paying them back. I haven't seen any of them on the road since. I keep thinking about what I would do if I saw them again. I imagine that I would just run them over, not that it would help the situation. I've become a bit of a nervous driver since then, and any loud sounds tend to set me off. I get nervous now in a lot of traffic, so we now try to leave earlier to avoid it. My kids hate that. We've gotten into the routine of going different routes in order to get to the school, or when we leave in the afternoon. One of the kids thought that it was exciting when it happened, and then said that he should be homeschooled instead, but my husband and I decided to keep them in the school. The community was pretty angry that they came over and attacked mums with kids over it, and I don't think they have many friends in my small town. But other than that, I've lived a pretty boring life with nothing else that's really happened. I don't typically comment on your videos, Raven, but I do listen to all of them. Thanks for doing them for us. They help me get through my day. If you use my story, it's going to definitely make my day. So thanks, Raven. Thank you for submitting it. So that, my friends, was a collection of some scary driving stories. On my documents, I technically labeled this as Volume 1, but is it really? I don't know. I've done road trip stories, I've done driving at night stories, so can I really say this is Volume 1 of my driving scary stories? I don't know. I'm going to, but it's probably not an accurate statement. These weren't all at night, though, so it's not a driving at night video. Just driving. I don't know. Semantics that don't really matter whenever it comes to my damn channel. It's just stuff that I write in spreadsheets. Yeah. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. This collection of scary driving stories I did. And hopefully you all enjoyed the month of March. Here we are on the 30th of March, the final day of this daily content, kind of. Tomorrow there's a video coming out. It's just a for sleep video. It's not part of the daily content thing for the most part. But today is the last new content video of the month of March. We did 29 patients, do you recall? I said earlier how many it was, so I'm asking her. Just went and counted 29 videos in 31 days. The only 2 days that did not have a video were Friday the 1st and Friday the 29th, and on both of those days, I did a live stream instead. So technically, if you want to count those, I did 31 content things in 31 days in the month of March. And it has been a very fun experiment. It's been a good time, and it was an experiment. I was testing something. What was I testing? You will never know. It's how logistics work whenever you're working on content creation. You do things behind the scenes, and people never see it coming or understand what's happening. It's a psychological experiment, if you will. Not really. But it was fun. It was good. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of time spent doing this, and I have rarely been happier than how I have been this month. This month was stressful, but it was a good stress. Because, as I have said numerous times, and I'm going to start rambling here, as I have said numerous times to people who've asked or mentioned it, I love doing this. I never saw myself doing this full-time as a job, but yet here I am. And being my full-time job, I can decide if I want to do 3 videos a week as I normally do, Or hell, let's have a month where I do 31 videos in 31 days. I get to decide the workload. And with that workload, yes, it's stressful, but I then also get to see, and I think this is why I love doing this so much, I get to then see the fruits of my labor. I get to create something artistic. I get to put that artistry out into the world. And then from that, I am creating this beautiful audience that I love dearly. You all make this worth it. It is worth it more than I can say. So, just saying. And that's kind of what this month was. I wanted to see what my mental state would be at the end of it. Is this sustainable as something I could do all year? No, absolutely not. Is it something I could do again, say, come June? Maybe. Probably. Possibly. I intend to do it again eventually. But I think for a little bit, we're going to go back to 3 a week, just to take a small break. At least for April. At least for April. For the first 2 weeks, I think. I think I have an extra video that I need to put together, or I intend to put together near the end of the month. So, anyways, my point is, it's been a great time. I loved this, and we will continue on and press on. And April will be a good month too. So, you can like the video if you liked the video. You can subscribe if you're new to the channel. You can leave a comment if you're feeling bold and want to tell me how much you've enjoyed the month. I'm gonna speed this up a little bit because it's already 5 minutes almost, or 4 minutes already. So, Patreon memberships, early access to content like this. Super thanks is just a tip to the channel. Never expected, always appreciated. And of course, please do remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my friends, on April 1st, much love. Sleep well.